So we are here discussing the witch wound and healing the witch wound more specifically. And I would love to hear from all of you, starting with you, Marcella. First of all, how you describe what the witch wound is, what that means to you, and maybe a little bit of what your experience has been in your own healing.
Well, it's interesting that occult practices and the practice of magic and being a witch is so, it's becoming more and more on the forefront of society, especially in this day and age. People are reclaiming their magic. They are getting tuned in and tapped into their own empowerment. And for, many years, being a magical person was pretty demonized. And the witch wound, I find, is something that goes through all cultures, all time and space, and we all have some kind of connection to places where we were repressed in our magic or punished for practicing our traditions. And the witch wound in itself, we see it when it comes up with doubts, imposter syndrome, fear of persecution, fear, whether it's in your mind or in your DNA structure, because we have this, imprinted cellular memory of being persecuted. The witch wound can come up when we see, I even see it with like the toxic or dark feminine energies, people, competitiveness, pitting each other against each other, not working together in harmony. There's many, many ways the witch wound affects us as a collective, but also on an individual level, and how we show up, or even if we're like, oh no, I can't do that. I can't be myself. I can't practice, being empowered through my magic. I mean, that's just like the tip of the iceberg of it for me.
Do you see the witch wound as being separate from or apart from trauma that's lived in this lifetime, in this experience?
No. I mean, I think it's all connected. I mean, it's just one thing feeds off of the other, It is intergenerational, but it's very current because we grow up in a particular way and you keep reinforcing these things, whether you're consciously doing it or not, until you decide that you're going to work on it, and make active adjustments or active conscious decisions to heal it.
So what has been your own experience of healing your wound?
Well, I mean, a big part of it, like I said, is like letting people love me, having like a very intense, it's interesting even now in this lifetime, even 10 years ago, I was doing readings like anywhere I could kind of set up, and it was like people would still I remember getting yelled at the Rose Bowl, being like, how dare you?
Who yelled
and,
at you?
Some very Christian woman, about only God knows. But the fears of persecution had come up, or even I had been renting a space and I had people who were in the studio next door complaining that they were uncomfortable with the witch being in the building, yet they knew nothing about me or what I did. And even though it's more widely accepted, especially in the last 5 years, definitely the isolation and being kind of in this kind of solo practice, because there wasn't a community for me. I have a lot of trust issues with community. And I think it's because of past lives, persecution, because of family of origin pain, because of, intergenerational trauma with practices being taken on such a deep core level, that it's definitely affected my life today, and I've had to consciously work on it, whether with healers, through readings, through energy sessions, through therapy, traditional Western, psychology, talk therapy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've had to work at every angle, through astrology, through spells, through magic, through the Akashic record. I mean, I've done it. And I will do whatever is in front of me. I'm like, yeah, great. Send me to Andromeda to work it out. I'm cool.
Whatever it takes.
I don't want to come back and do this again. And I don't want to pass it on. So,
yes, the trauma stops here.
Trauma stops here. I don't know. I also think it's I don't know if anybody's into astrology, I'm a 29th degree, it's an anaretic degree of Pisces. So I'm on the I'm either I'm really late or I'm really early. For something, I don't know what yet. Maybe it's the rebirth of the world. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of astrology, Chani.
I don't know.
Well, what has been your personal experience, either working with your clients or for yourself personally, in terms of understanding and healing this wound that so many of us, or all of us, carry to some extent? Would you say that all of us carry it?
I think most do.
Yeah, most, yeah.
I tend to go to the personal, and so I think we all have, we all come from a specific lineage, and that lineage has, or many lineages, and those have specific cultural relationships to power structures. And so for me personally, it's about that. And then also, in terms of the context that I grew up in a really alternative type of town where anything...
Where was that?
It was in British Columbia, Canada. And so nothing was weird, and nothing was I could not the only way I could rebel was to want to go to therapy and not want to be a drug addict. So there was literally nothing I could do to be witch, fine, whatever. It wasn't a thing for me. So I don't really have that kind of societal thing. I didn't grow up with that. And then my dad's third wife, her mom was a Reiki master and knew every kind of healer, and that came into my life at age 11. So I had a really non-traditional kind of upbringing.
Oh my God, you're so lucky.
Well, I don't know.
I think there's some people in this room who wish that they had that kind of exposure at such a young age, but please go on.
Yes. Yeah, it was mixed with a lot of other stuff, but yeah, so I think it's really specific. So as a Jew, when I'm in Jewish spaces, there's a specific thing that happens when I say I'm an astrologer. I don't say I'm an astrologer that often. I try to say I'm a writer, or I have an online business, because Jews have had to exist within Christianity for so long, and we've had to strip ourselves of the more magical practices because astrology and Judaism came up at the same time. And so was literally inundated and woven through so much of who we were. I mean, we practice celebrating the new moon every month, and we say Mazel Tov, which literally means under a good sign. Astrology is everywhere. It's so baked into our world in so many different ways. It's in Shakespeare, it's in medicine, it's in astronomy, it's everywhere. And so for me, there's a specific kind of Jewish distrust that I've had to work with, but not really in my very small lived reality in when I was growing up as a kid. But it's I don't know. It's not a huge deal to me personally, because I've had so much privilege and I've been able to do what I want, and I've been able to live my life in the way that I want, and I've had access to so much that I feel it's not been anything that's stopped me in any kind of way.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Naha, how about you?
Thanks. I think that it's interesting to go into where we come from, and when I think about growing up, I didn't grow up with religion, and I looked at friends of mine that went to church, and I was like, can I go to Sunday school with you? Now people that are my clients are like, what? That's all I wanted to get away from. And I just felt like I was missing out on something. I was seeking something. I wanted an explanation for things. I consider myself really a philosopher first and foremost, and I'm looking for the mysteries. I want to figure out why things work the way that they do. And in my family, things are just not talked about. I've joked, my mom tells people that I work in a gift shop, that's been my job for the last 10 years. And then my dad, who travels a lot for work, he was like, yeah, I was on a plane sitting next to a guy, and I told him my daughter conducts seances. So I was like, I actually don't, but it's just funny that like they have those two different takes on
At least he
things.
was proud.
Yeah, but I think that it was much more the influence of my mom, that it was like spiritual things just were not talked about, and I don't think she feels to this day like able to talk about it. My family is one where when somebody dies, like there's no funeral. It's really like a sad thing. It's just kind of like everyone move on with your life and have this wall of denial behind you. And it's really a big part of my purpose to take what my, not just my ancestors, but even like my living relatives aren't able to fully express, and go, God, you know, never has there been a time when we're more able to bring some of this stuff out and have these discussions and have our magic more outward facing. So I think that whether it is through like spirituality or whatever your purpose is, we all have an opportunity to take the work of our ancestors a step further than they were able to take it, and in doing that, maybe have some retroactive healing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Julian.
Yeah, I really like what you said, Naha, because by learning about the witch wound, because when Marcella asked me about to be on this panel, I was like, I don't know what a witch wound is. It really made me have to dig and go deep. And I was like, oh, I do inner child processes. I help people with mother-father processes. Like, that's intergenerational. And then I finally got to this place just last night where I felt like something was in the room. You guys ever get that? And then it's like, okay, open up your Akashic records. And the Akashic records is a vibrational record of your soul where you could commune with your masters, teachers, and loved ones. And when I opened that up, they go, we're your witch wound. And I was like, what? And I was all, who? They're all, your ancestors. And I was all like, okay. They're all like, we're your ancestors and you're ashamed of us. And I started to sob and I started to cry. And it was
Wait,
because
I'm sorry, did they say you're ashamed of us?
you're ashamed of us. And it's from the witch wound, and that's where it came from. Because I'm Filipino, and our country has been colonized over and over again by the Spanish, the Japanese, the United States. And so each time we're trying to assimilate, but we cannot be those people because that's not who we are. And so what I realized from that and the sobbing that I was feeling, it was me leaning into the pain, because the pain was connecting me to my ancestors that I have forgotten and have tried to erase. And what I'm learning from this now, and it's very fresh because I just learned it yesterday, was that now I've uncovered the witch wound, which was a sheath over this treasure trove of knowledge, of wisdom, of magic, that I now have access to because I have leaned into their pain, which is my pain, which has got me to this place where, I could do what I'm doing and what I love and heal the ancestral line backwards. And what Naha said, just bring it forward and do better and be better.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we were talking about this before the panel tonight, and I also recently, I had this for years, for so long I can't even remember, I had this flutter in my chest, and I would get it, and it was a stress trigger thing. And I just would always kind of be like, oh, go away, damn it, there it is again. And then finally, a couple months ago, I was like, you know what is this about? What's going on here? And I decided to sit down and do a meditation. And I did this meditation, and I saw all of my ancestors, like rows and rows and rows of people. I've never had an experience like this before, and it was completely amazing. And no one was speaking in this meditation, but just like in a dream when right? Like there's like that nonverbal communication. It was like this lineage of trauma and of powerlessness. Like that was the thing that just kept on coming up, was like powerlessness of all these generations of, people who had been enslaved and all of these things. And I was able to just talk to them and say, I have more freedom and I have more power than you ever could have even conceived of. So it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And it was just this, I'm getting emotional just talking about it. And I have not had that flutter since. And I was like, oh, there's something going on here. There's something to this. So I guess sort of piggybacking off of that, and what would be your advice, so Marcella, starting with you, for people to, and I know there's so many different modalities, but like for people who are trying to really understand more of what this ancestral trauma and this wound, what would you say is a good starting point for people to start to access that?
Well, like I had mentioned, like for me, the creativity is a big part of contacting it in a way that feels gentle, not necessarily easy. I have a pretty colorful background in the sense that I'm multiracial, and I was adopted when I was 5, and nothing was talked about with like one of my grandmothers is an Italian, she's Italian Catholic. Lots of things, nobody talks about stuff, and she moved here when she was 12. And there's so much pain, right? And because I can't get answers, because there's a lot of pain from that part of the family, I had to create different ways to ask questions. And one of the things that's like in the book that really helped me, and that's the things in this book are all things that I've used over the last several years, so everything in there is something I've done. So in the book, there is a drawing, if you open up, and there's a tree, an empty tree, and it's an ancestor tree. And I drew this because I was like, how the F am I going to heal any of this stuff if I don't know who these people are, But I've done I did 23andMe, I did Ancestry, I did all these things trying to get answers that nobody would give me because I'm very determined to find out the truth. And when I wasn't getting all the answers, but it just started unfolding more questions, I drew this tree, I sat down and I drew this tree, and I went, okay, I'm going to write in here the names of the people that I know, and then for anyone that I don't know, I'm just going to write ancestor, okay? So I did that, and I put it on my altar, and I made it like all, my sacred space, which I do, and I shit you not, within a week, I started getting close relative matches on some of these sites, and this woman contacts me and says, who are you? Because I'm really confused. She's like, why does this girl look white? And she's like, in our first cousin. And through that, I actually, I got connected with my biological father and his whole family. And this was all back in last year in November, so almost a year ago. And I got the most amount of answers that I had been hiring detectives and all these things. Anyway, the point being is I didn't take a traditional approach to it, I used what I had, which was my creativity, to go, okay, help me make a tool. So that's why I include it in the book, because you might not have the information. Because I come from lineages of colonizer to the colonized, indigenous practices, stolen, repressed, having to pass as white. I have slave ancestors. I have slave ship owners. I have, criminals and drug dealers and other people. But then I also found out I have this amazing lineage of, I have my Filipino ancestry. I have my Wampanoag Native American ancestry, my Irish ancestry, my Italian ancestry, and my Mali, West African Mali ancestry. And through that, I found out my great-great-grandparents left the South after being, my great-great-grandfather was freed, and he married a woman, and they moved up north to Rhode Island and started a business, which was, unheard of. And I was like, that's my resilience. I get it from way back, even if people can't tell me. So why wouldn't I make tools that help you find new and inventive ways? Because the other thing is, we're not going to find healing in a system that's not built for us. We have to make new systems and new ways of healing, right? And especially when you start to, I'm very privileged in the way that I am white passing, but it's being in this liminal space. Also, I hear a lot of stuff that's really painful, So again, it's just go with not with what is easy, but what is a natural strength for you. So like I said, for me, it was art. That's where I started.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I also love what you said about asking questions, because I think even when we don't know where this answer could possibly come from. Just asking the question, it opens something up and it allows like that inspiration to come in, and it allows that flow and that magic to come in. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you. So Chani, how about you? And I'm curious, because as an astrologer, even though you haven't personally, as you were sharing, dealt with this so much for yourself, what with your clients, with people who are coming to you seeking guidance, what method, what's the process of helping people to understand some of this ancestral trauma or...
Oh, I didn't mean to say I didn't have that. I mean, I'm Jewish.
Well, I was like, you're Jewish, but okay.
You want to talk about, anxiety, depression? No. A lot of inherited neuroses. I've got all that. I didn't mean to say that I don't. It's just that I don't. It's not something that I think I feel all the time. The question again? How do I?
So when people come to you, and they're looking for, and maybe they don't. I don't know. How common is it for someone to come to you and not only look for guidance for their own lives and
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. I like to start here,
Yeah.
right? I like to be like, how can I serve you? Mm-hmm. What's going on? And I talk about life cycles with people. So I talk about what cycle you're in, given the planets. But I think that we all have so many guides and spirits and ancestors around us that want to help us and that are waiting for us to ask for their help. And I think that, again, whatever your cultural practice, whatever resonates with you, however your people honor the dead in whatever ways that feels like you can kind of carry forth in your life now, especially at this time of year, I think it's really important to make space for them. There's, again, it's really depends on what resonates with you, but I think we don't grieve in our society, and we are on stolen land where people were massacred and enslaved, and all of this is a lie, and we're walking around so disassociated because we live in such a disassociated world, and so we're not mourning. I was walking around here what the is this? I didn't even know this was here. It's just these, things pop up and you're like, what is this manufactured strange? Okay, so now we're here. But so wait, where do we come from? What was happening here before? And I've been obsessed with this as a child. I'm sure a lot of people are for various different reasons, but growing up in Canada, I grew up in really quite very destroyed, but also very untouched wilderness. And so it was a tiny town of 10,000 people at the base of the Rocky Mountains with bears and whatever. It was I was really in there. And so, and in Canada, there's a little bit more of culture about like who the first people were there, and there's a little bit more than there is in America. America's just like wiped clean of everything. So I've always spent a lot of time thinking like, what was it? How did it function? What did it look like before everything happened? And I think also like you, like I grew up with a mom who just wanted to leave all of her roots and leave her Jewishness and leave all of that stuff, and like went to this little hippie town in the middle of nowhere. And so I was always like, who the fuck am I? Because I was like one, and it sounds silly, but I was like one of two Jewish kids in the school. And so like I had that thing where I was
silly.
Like,
that's hard.
It wasn't hard, but it was just a thing. And because like, anyways, my family didn't, people there, anti-Semitism was ish. So I was always like, who am I, and how does that happen, and why don't I know anything about who I am and where I come from? And so that yearning was always in me. But I think that if you're somebody who practices any kind of magic or any kind of like root traditions, that you have that in you, right? Because again, we're living in such a not everybody, but on a kind of overall cultural basis, we're living in this really strange paradigm. And so I think that tapping into any part of your specific lineage kind of opens up a gateway. Even if it's not your jam, even if it's not the full thing, there's something in the resonance. Like when I hear Hebrew, it does something to me. Even though it's a patriarchal tradition, even though it also like, it covered over the matriarchal stuff that was happening before, even though I like to go beyond and deeper into it, there's something about those sounds that hold something of spiritual, psychological, and physiological importance for me. And so that's where I think you should go. I think you should go to what does that for you, and because it'll unlock something in your specific lineage for your family and your people, and you're here to do something in that lineage that they couldn't do, like all of us are, and we are living backwards and forwards, and we're in this kind of crossroads here. And so I think we should always start with who I am, where I am, how did my people get here, why did they get here? You know, all those questions I think can lead us into some really radical action in terms of reparations, in terms of repairing and healing, in terms of all of those things. But I think without really understanding the roots, we don't know how to be here.
Yeah. It's interesting. You guys are saying very similar things, even though you have very different experiences and kind of lenses through which. So that's I love that. Yeah, really, it's all about starting where you are.
I think witches want to get to the root.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So Naha, so for you growing up in a family that, you know, you didn't grieve your dead and you didn't have that access to spirituality, has that been something, I mean, clearly you've been a searcher, you were born a searcher, but what's been your process, since your family isn't really cooperative in that sense, what's been your process of tapping into your ancestral lineage? And
Well, it definitely has been like a long time in the making, and I think that I had to go through like a big period of rejection of all of it. Like, you know, I had to go through my like really rebellious stage, and just like that stretched way more decades than it probably needed to, and in some like weird way, it was like all I wanted to do is reclaim my power, and so. Whether that was like a struggle against authority, a struggle against rules, a struggle against, you know, this is the way you're supposed to live your life. However, I could like claim my power back was what I was trying to do. And then at some point, I think it was actually like, well, I know it was around my Saturn return. This was around 2004. I hit my Saturn return, and I realized, great, now I have all of my quote unquote power, and I'm a total freaking mess. Like, I was a total alcoholic. I had, I mean, that was basically like at the root of everything. But I had like no handle on life. I had crippling social anxiety. I had panic attacks that took me to the hospital. And it was like, how is this search for like gaining control led me to this place where I'm just like riddled with paranoia and toxic? And so at that point, it was like realizing, well, now I have to give the control back up again, but I don't have to give it up to a doctor or to society or to my parents or to the man. I have to like give it up to something higher. And it was like a huge weight lifted off of my shoulders. And at this point, like, my concept of what that is, I picture God like a giant library. That's what it looks like to me. And it's like, it's just all knowledge that ever has been and will be. And some people might call it the Akashic Records or whatever it might be. But with the vastness of that, and to connect that to your question about connecting with ancestors, I tried to make things so difficult for so long, and now the best thing that I can find is to just simplify things as much as possible and to work in the unknown, to whether it's connect with an ancestor from generations ago or from hundreds of thousands, like Atlantean times ago, or whatever it might be, to keep it so simple, to ask simple questions. Help me to know you better. show me a sign. Like really, really simple things, not like jumping through 1,000 hoops, although I do like to do that as well. But yeah, simplifying it, because complicating it is just like, it's too much work, it's too much responsibility.
Yeah, I love it. Back to the questions. Asking those questions is so powerful. So Julian, I know that you just had this experience that you're still processing, and I guess that was the first time that you had really felt that connection to your ancestors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of other people, like clients who are coming to you, and I mean, I would imagine that this is a very common thing that people are dealing with and trying to reconcile within themselves. And is it Akashic Records that you feel? Is that, like, what's the medium that you see being most helpful for people?
I agree with everybody else where it is asking the right questions, but also use what you know and use what you have access to. For me, like when you said fluttering, I still feel that flutter, and I don't know if that's a connection of like that's just what it is. So I want to say, because this is trauma that is in your DNA, trust your body. Look into your body. Trust the sensations that are in your body. Go deeper, because deeper into that sensation is a feeling and that emotion, and I feel like that's what I accessed last night. And from that, that's where the healing really happens, when you're able to move through. And that's something really simple. And I did go into Marcella's book, and I looked at the tree, and I wrote ancestors really big in Sharpie because I want them to come through. But that's how I usually even access with just clients, because I do this other modality called the 5 Elements Mind, where we dialogue with your ego, your mental, your body, your emotions, and your soul. And when you finally get to the soul, you realize your true power and who you really are. And you're able to start to heal that emotional, which is coming from an experience. Maybe it was from this lifetime, or maybe it was a past lifetime of your ancestors. But hey, we're here to heal it because we are perfect, right? And if we could get to that place and see the bigger picture of things, life gets a lot easier, right?